Greetings, citizens, and thanks for tuning in to Nindie Nation episode 179. I'm Jeff, and today we're covering one of the most anticipated games of the year, plus every indie worth considering that's coming to the eShop through March 26th. Head on down to the comments and tell me what's going on your wish list, and if there's something we should add to this Thursday's Nindies Nite stream. It's been a long time coming, citizens. Have a Nice Death is finally here, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. So hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and let's get this show on the road. These are the 13 new notable Nindies hitting the Nintendo Switch through Sunday, March 26th. Kung Fury is a Kickstarter-funded action comedy movie that released in 2015, and you can follow the dimension-traveling Miami cop through his 30-minute adventure for free on YouTube if you happen to dig movies that are so bad, they're good. There was even a sequel released last year, but perhaps even more surprising is that this week we're getting a brand new game with Kung Fury Street Rage Ultimate Edition. It's developed by
Hello there.
Games, whose catalog ranges from excellent cheap releases to outsourced mobile garbage. And from what I can see, it looks like Kung Fury falls into the camp of the former, which is a good thing. $20 prices this game right alongside Streets of Rage 4 though, and I struggle to think they'll be considered equals, but I am interested in checking it out nonetheless. It supports 2-player co-op, uses a sweet 80s arcade art style, and lets you play as a cop, a walking computer terminal, and among others, my favorite character, the Triceracop. Get it? Because it's like Triceratops and a cop, and it's a cop. That's a Triceratops. Cosmic Dreams is a mobile developer from Warsaw who's making their way to the eShop this week. And despite sounding like the hottest evening session going on at PAX, I kinda like what they're doing here with Furry Fury Smash and Roll, which drops for $9.99. Imagine a game of pool, but replace the balls with little monsters, and you're on the right track. Seems like it'd fit in the same category of games as Round Guard and Rollers of the Realm because the classic gameplay is replaced with a story mode, trap-laden levels, and character progression. Seems like mobile players enjoy it, so if you're interested, maybe start with their free-to-play version while we wait to see how it translates to the Switch. There's 2 games of note releasing on Wednesday the 22nd, so first of all, let's get Saintmaker out of the way. It's a religious horror visual novel developed by Yang Yang, whose previous releases, Perfect Gold and Love Esquire, reviewed pretty well. It includes about 5 hours of story with voice acting throughout, the usual dialogue choices that lead to multiple endings and added replay value, and it arrives on the eShop by way of Mama Marin for $13.99. But the other game, citizens, if you're ready for me to shut up about it, buckle up because this is my last chance to sell you on Have a Nice Death before it releases this Wednesday for $24.99. And let me tell y'all, this is one of the greats. It doesn't have quite the infinite replayability like Hades, Dead Cells, or Rogue Legacy, but it has a boatload of content and features combat that feels genuinely unique in the genre. Set against the backdrop of workplace burnout and tongue-in-cheek office humor, you play as Death, the CEO of Death Inc. Death was overworked and underappreciated for how much of a role he plays in ushering people into the afterlife, so he created a few office workers to help lighten his load. Now, as creations of evil masterminds tend to do, this cast of hilarious characters have gone rogue, wanting to run the afterlife in their own way, and now Death needs to set down his coffee, trade his slippers for some combat sandals, don his robe and scythe, and set out to remind those clowns who's boss. You do this by hacking and slashing your way through various biomes that are ever-changing, because Have a Nice Death is a 2D trifecta with procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! It's developed by Magic Design Studios, who's made up of industry veterans, many of whom came from the team at Ubisoft, responsible for Child of Light and Rayman Legends. And just like their first outing, the wonderful Unruly Heroes, Have a Nice Death looks stunning, like an interactive Pixar movie. But they didn't do it alone. In fact, part of the game's announcement back in December of 2021 was the inclusion of Sebastian Bernard, who worked as a consultant throughout the game's development and is otherwise best known as the lead designer of Dead Cells. So if it's pedigree you're looking for, this team's got it in spades. The game's structure is similar to Dead Cells. You always start at the same place, where you can purchase a couple of upgrades and have a few options to make the run harder or easier. And as you set out on your run, each biome has several sprawling levels separated by an elevator where you can choose between various rooms, like a shop, mini-boss, or currency vault, and occasionally, one of those choices will split you off into a different fork for the rest of the biome. The upgrades are very well done too, with most of the unlocks causing different items to drop during your run, but a couple are available to change your loadout or various rules, which can then add the potential for a stronger build. Combat and general movement are excellent too, as you get a couple of weapons to choose from, and each can evolve a couple of times. Basically, you have your scythe, some daggers, an axe, or my favorite, the not sure what you call it, but it's the Chains of Olympus from God of War. You know, knife thingies on chains. They're awesome. Each weapon has multiple combos, and they can change some of your movement abilities too. But beyond the great design, the awesome visuals, the trove of weapons, and all the rest, just like Unruly Heroes, it's the presentation that stands out so much. Because this game looks and sounds outstanding, with a lighthearted spookiness that you'd see in a Tim Burton animated film, or something more like Psychonauts in the gaming realm. The characters are hilarious, and while you can skip dialogue, reading through all of Death's lines, where you can tell he's just completely over dealing with all of the people in his life, it's just a level of dry, sarcastic wit that never ceases to make me laugh. All in all, I've put about 40 hours into Have a Nice Death since picking it up last summer, and I've been forcing myself to hold back on playing any more until the Switch version launches. I don't think it'll have any glaring performance issues on the Switch, and so far reviews don't seem to point any out, but it is worth noting that I have not yet played the version native to Nintendo's little hybrid console. But as long as that's fine, and I have no reason to see why it wouldn't be, I am quite confident in recommending Have a Nice Death, and fully expect it to be part of Nindie Nation's 2023 Game of the Year list. Moving on to the big Thursday drop on the 23rd, you know we've got something art housey or just downright weird, because the first release is published by Annapurna Interactive. This one's a bit simpler to wrap your head around though. Storyteller is developed by Daniel Benmergui and arms you with a blank comic strip, a handful of characters and assets, then gives you a prompt and you do your best to tell the story with what you've got to work with. Some examples include prompts like "a heartbreak is healed," or others that can change over time, like "the queen marries," leaving you to finish telling the story of who she marries. It's clever, it's simple, and it's charming. It's rated T, so it's appropriate for most ages, and it releases for $14.99. And speaking of charming, how about a game all about a bunch of sick, dying children? Oh, wait. Well, actually, that's pretty much what Rakuan, Japanese for paradise, is all about. In a lovely 16-bit aesthetic, this mostly narrative-based adventure game follows a young boy who's sick in the hospital, as he goes on adventures in his imagination to help him come to terms with his reality, as well as that of the other kids in the hospital. Fair warning though that most reviews will tell you the game tends to get spooky at times and is absolutely a tearjerker, but is otherwise heartwarming, and since its PC release in 2017, has garnered overwhelmingly positive reviews. It's developed by Laura Shigihara, aka Leeble Forest, and releases for $22.49. Though, if that seems a bit steep for a 10 to 12 hour experience, it's only $5 on Steam, so there's nothing wrong with waiting for a sale. Steelix Software is a small team based in Switzerland, primarily run by a husband and wife, and after their Kickstarter success released on PC last fall, Monorail Stories comes to the eShop this week for $14.99. It's a fully voiced adventure/visual novel that follows two ordinary people during their daily commute, and the apparently extraordinary things that happen to them. The game only runs a couple hours long, but having 2 perspectives plus the usual branching paths should offer some replay value. The soundtrack seems full of tunes to groove to based on the trailers I've seen, and it's a neat concept. Plus, being published by Freedom Games, whom I have a lot of respect for, I'm confident it's at least going to be a solid experience. Then, as I mentioned at the end of last week's episode, East Asia Soft is stepping out of their comfort zone to bring a modern, pretty original fighting game to the eShop with Omen of Sorrow by A1 Games. Seeing generally average reception on other platforms, it's otherwise a flashy, stylish fighter with characters inspired by classic horror tropes. It gives off Killer Instinct vibes, but also gives each character their own weapon, so there's a bit of Soul Calibur inspiration in there too. It's got the usual modes you'd expect, online multiplayer and a survival mode, and it can be all yours for $19.99. Last up on Thursday is a game whose title is pissing off my computer's spell check, but making my dad joke radar spike off the charts because Scrambled is a
zany multiplayer party game with a gimmick!
And that gimmick is chicken-based puns. Actually, the gimmick is some kind of mix between tennis and dodgeball, where you hit eggs with a frying pan while trying not to get pelted yourself. The team at Unboxed and 11 Sheep have clearly lost all self-control as they encourage you to get together with up to 4 quirky cluckers and fly the coop in a cluck-a-doodle duel to become the... You ready for this?
I don't think you're ready for this.
The ultimate mother clucker! Do I think this is a great use of $8? I don't know. I was just excited to share these terrible jokes, so good work, team. We begin the lineup of Friday releases on March 24th with this week's version of...
Whoa, I had no idea this game existed, and it looks super cool.
Nagasto's Misadventure meeting Nier Rose is certainly a mouthful of nonsense, which makes sense as this more action-oriented point-and-click adventure is all about exploring the various eras of video game aesthetics by diving into the game consoles that are bugging out. It's developed by Aurora Game Studio and published by Pix and Love Games. It certainly falls into the point-and-click adventure genre, but has some platforming, mini-games, and a bit of action too, just kinda based on which era of video games you're exploring at the time. Hell, there's even a boss fight against a garbled-up Wispy Woods. It's got multiple endings as usual, so the replay value should be there, and it launches with a 25% discount for $14.99. Ratalaika's release for the week is a quirky little arcade game developed by Viradino Studios, and for $4.99, I think Steel Defier looks like a pretty fun palate cleanser for when you're in between other larger games. You're dropped into an isometric room with all kinds of evolving traps, and you have to avoid the obstacles while grabbing cards and keys that are randomly dropped throughout. Not much else to say about this one, but with 40 levels, upgrades to collect, and a low barrier to entry, it seems like a nice addition to Ratalaika's catalog. The Skullfish Studios, a predominantly mobile developer, brings one of their more acclaimed titles to the Switch in partnership with Naptime Games with Leela's Tale and the Hidden Forest. It looks like a typical hop and bop platformer where you just move to the right, collect the things, fight occasional bosses, and that's just about it. And while I don't personally see anything noteworthy here, it has been very well received on mobile and only releases for $5. So if you're looking for a simple, easy game like this, well, there you go. And last up for the week is Flash Out 3. While it looks like F-Zero, I'd say it's a bit closer to Wipeout because the high-speed racing is complemented by weapons and traps to use on your opponents, so there's more combat than just relying purely on skill. It looks beautiful, and the PC demo I tinkered with earlier this week was a pretty good time. It releases for $19.99 and includes a couple bucks off for launch week, but just for now, I'd say wait for a sale, as it's already half off on Steam, and we need to see how it performs on the Switch first. So what do you think? Clearly my pick is Have a Nice Death, but there's also a couple other titles that have piqued my interest. Kung Fury could be a fun brawler, and if you like story-driven games, Rakuan, Monorail Stories, and Nagasto's Misadventure all bring something unique to the table. Tell me down in the comments what's going on your wish list, and if there's something you want to see beyond, have a nice death, because that's definitely going to be the focus of this Thursday's Nindies at Night. So come join us at 10 p.m. Eastern and see what it's all about. The big release for next week is Blade Assault, one of my favorite PC games from last year, but I have some concerns about the performance, so we'll have to see if there's a patch coming for the game's big console launch. Next week is also the kickoff to GDC, or the Game Developers Conference, and in the past, there has consistently been an indie world alongside it, so I expect we'll get some big shadow drops in what otherwise looks like a slimmer than usual week. But that's all for next week, citizens, because we're all done for today. Don't forget to stop by our Discord server and say hi, and as always, thank you for watching, liking, subscribing, and sharing Nindie Nation with others. Until next week, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindie Nation episode 179, and remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindie Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.